So when I hit 200 subscribers, I opened up a Q&A in my Discord server, the Chromatic Embassy. It's been a month or so since I closed it, so I wonder how my subscriber count is doing. What? Dude, I've really taken a long time on this, haven't I? Okay, no more procrastinating. Today, I will be answering some of the questions that you have had for me. So without further ado, let's begin. First up, Wonderstar asks, am I your best fwiend? Pleading emoji, fingers together emojis. I don't know how to reply to this one. We are friends, to say the least. But why do you have your fingers together like you're some sort of, I don't really know, a beggar? I don't get it. This is the first question, and I'm already dealing with beggars. Just kidding, I respect you, Wonderstar. Hopefully there's no more like this. Alright, next up, Koteka asks, if you could make one character from the entirety of the OSC appear in real life and be friends with them, who would you choose and why? That's a tough one, honestly. There's a lot of characters that I probably would want to be friends with if I knew them in real life. And honestly, this is not the first time I've thought about a question like this. I feel like the possibility of the human world and the object world colliding with one another was like some sort of wacky daydream I sometimes had from time to time back in like 2021 or so, when I was much younger. I always thought the idea was interesting, even if it was completely impractical. But trying to choose just one character to bring into my world is hard. I will say though, it would be someone from Inanimate Insanity, as I feel like the show just has the highest quantity of characters that I just outright adore, and I feel like we could get along with, such as Paintbrush, Suitcase, Fan, Lightbulb, Test Tube, or even Taco in some cases. I'd say when it comes to general shared interests and overall personality, my pick would probably have to be Lightbulb. I mean, we both have artistic talents in some way, and I feel like in some ways that'd be pretty similar to Paintbrush all over again. But I am also aware that Lightbulb tends to get extremely homesick when she's away from her actual friends for too long. So I have no idea if this would be harmful to her or not. But hey, at least I can animate her friends. Please, God. Please, God. Let me save her from this terrible fate that is Inanimate Insanity Season 2, Episode 17. Please, I'm begging you. Please. Okay, alright. Forward Adventurer asks, so, what the F do I ask you? Oh, this is evil, but, favorite Last Lifeline crew member? Jesus Christ, please do not make me play this game with my own crew. I don't have favorites when it comes to the line. The line being the kind of nickname I've given to the Last Lifeline crew, by the way. Alright, fine. Maybe I do have a couple that I will not name for the sake of fairness. But I will say, when it comes to being a staff member on the line, I tend to have more respect for those who can do their jobs in a reasonable amount of time. I'm not saying every voice actor has to get on the job right as the script releases, but many people on the line willingly signed up for this, even if this is not paid work. Why apply for a job as a VA or storyboarder or whatever if you're not going to do your part? Just curious. Error Random Mac asks, can a match box? I don't know, why don't we go ask her? I haven't caught up on the Power of Two, so I don't know if she's still in the exit or whatever other purgatory she may have ended up in. But if we could go ask her, it wouldn't hurt to try. Except for the fact that we live in completely different universes. At the very least, I know she's a verbal fighter, but I doubt someone with a Valley Girl type behavior would actually be a good physical fighter. And for the record, I know this is not what the question asked, but this is how I chose to take it. Alright, Light Shock asks, which one do you prefer more, pizza or hamburgers? I would say that this question is mostly subjective and depends on what you feel like eating. However, overall, I would probably say I prefer pizza over hamburgers. And perhaps the fact that pizza is one of my dad's favorite foods might have influenced me over saying this. But to me, they're both in similar boats. Online32AE asks, how good is your art skills? I don't know, why don't you go take a look? 80% of my channel is object show related animations with a random other video that falls into the category of music or Flood Escape 2. Actually, I do know why you in particular are asking me this question. You found out about my YouTube channel through that one Liquid Breakout map compilation I made a few months ago, and not from my actual animations. I would advise you go take a look at what else I have been posting if you want to know. Nova Azurite asks, who are your inspirations with making art / creating music / etc.? Oh great, I can now ramble on about who I stan. I'll start by talking about my biggest inspirations for making art, and or how I make my art and animations now. First of all, if you've watched that little video series I made back in March where I recorded myself remaking the Last Lifeline character assets, you may know that one of my main art inspirations is Electric Indigo, as they are called now. They aren't exactly prevalent on any social media outside of Discord as far as I can tell, but they are a pretty amazing artist. I just think she's great with how she uses shapes and colors. Her assets are vibrant and have so much detail put into them that it's quite absurd. And another inspiration for my art is from user Dreamerlin, who is mostly active on Discord and Tumblr, and funny enough, is actually my ex-girlfriend. Yet despite that, we're still on great terms. It's probably partially because we don't actually know each other IRL, it's like a long distance thing, or whatever. Their art style is fluffier and more pastel-like, almost like French Rococo if it had actual meaning. I don't commonly get influence when it comes to assets from her, but for backgrounds it is a pretty cute art style that I sometimes try to replicate. As for a more recent case, some of you may know that I animate for Cold Geek's object show Clash to be Champion. I didn't really expect the animation process for C2BC to be much of an eye-opener for me since I had been using Adobe Animate for over 2 years by that point, but I was wrong. Even though as of writing this I've only animated that one scene for episode 7 because I got too busy for episode 8 and Cole animated episode 9 on his own. Also, spoiler alert, I am working on a scene for episode 10 but I cannot post that yet because it's still a work in progress and the episode is not released yet. It really showed me a lot about how inefficient my current animation style, being mostly free-drawn, was. The decision to return to using character rigs for Last Lifeline was made back in August since I knew that was going to be quicker than continuing to try and free-draw it. And this decision was influenced heavily by that one scene I animated for Clash to be Champion. Cole doesn't know anything about my show, but you have inspired me to make this decision, so thank you. Alright, enough about art. I still need to talk about music because it's worth noting that I do compose music as well, even if music doesn't really do great on my channel. I'm going to keep this part more brief since although I have a ton of inspirations for how I try to make music, most of them are part of a general community that isn't strongly connected to the object show community. But before I get to that, I will just point out that the person who asked me this question, Nova Azurite, is a pretty big inspiration for me. They also composed some music for Last Lifeline, although sadly they do not anymore for personal reasons. Anyways, Flood Escape 2. It's a Roblox game that has some of the most underrated music composers you'll probably ever see, and many of them are pretty big inspirations for what I want to try and be in this department. There's names such as among others. Shout out to all of you guys because it's pretty insane how many of you haven't even cracked 5,000 subscribers. I'd go check out their channels if I were you. Their stuff is pretty cool. Except for Lux Types, he's suspicious as hell and you're best staying away. This question is getting a bit too long, let's proceed. Your online assistant asks, what is there one of in every corner and two of in every room? Is this a riddle? I don't know if this is a riddle. Okay, yeah, it's a riddle. I didn't want to end up Googling it, but I ended up doing so because I am not good at riddles, and I did not know how to answer that. For the record, the answer is the letter O. Taya Stars asks, what inspired you to become an OSC YouTuber and to make an object show? I originally joined the object show community back in 2016, but I was only 9 years old and definitely would not have been able to join any object show projects. But it faded out of my interest for a while until the start of 2021, when I watched all of BFB, which was up to episode 28 at the time, in a day or two, and I ended up getting hooked. Ever since then, like almost anyone else in the OSC, I had a desire to create an object show, but I did not get Adobe Animate until summer of 2022, so for about a year and a half I was stuck trying to make works using Clip-a-Clip and Ibis Paint X. which for me wasn't great. Although I would compete in object camps, I did not make any major object show related works until I got access to anime. During that time, however, I had plenty of time to work on how to write characters better and actually come up with concepts for a potential object show, most of which unfortunately did not stick. But one of the major ones I still somehow remember to this day was a concept that I scrapped for a while that I was planning with Dreamer Lynn. Recently I did actually revitalize this concept, just not to the same level as before, so I will talk about it briefly. The concept was called Elemental Tribulations, and it was going to be somewhat inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender. It was going to be a split competition and lore focused show hosted by my OC Chess Spawn, and yes, he is related to Chess Piece from Last Lifeline, and Dreamer Lynn's OC Ice Glass. I remember a decent amount of the silly ideas we'd come up with for the show, such as extravagantly surreal environments which became the foundation for the roleplay region of Fertile Rod in the Chromatic Embassy, crystals that gave you superpowers, and even an all-knowing god out of touch with the rest of the world. Like, completely out of touch, by the way. You couldn't even interact with them physically. Oh, and it also would have taken place in the year 2047. The more I write about this, the more I realize it probably would have been really cool if the concept had stayed afloat. But sadly, Last Lifeline ended up being a much bigger fish than I expected. And speaking of which, Neverworks asks, what's the inspiration behind Last Lifeline? Okay, I'll be right back. I'm gonna head up Calculovo real quick. So, to anyone who does not yet know, Last Lifeline isn't really my concept. It was first created as an object camp back in late 2021. Just as a memory refresher, the camp was simply known as Lifeline, and I competed in that camp as Chess Piece. I placed 8th and made it up to the 17th challenge, but for a good chunk of the camp I was hanging by a thread trying to avoid elimination until I eventually gave in. But it was by far one of the most emotional object community projects that I had ever witnessed, period. You know, death games aren't exactly supposed to be lighthearted and fun, but the lore was just spectacular. So spectacular that I thought it could have been something more. So sometime in mid-June 2022, I contacted Calculovo and asked her about the possibility of turning Lifeline into a comic series, which was an idea she liked and many other contestants seemed to be on board with. And yes, originally Last Lifeline was supposed to just be a comic, as back then my plans for a genuine object show were oriented around the prior Elemental Tribulations idea. But if I remember correctly, the decision to turn LL into an object show came about in October or November of 2022. And whether or not I regret that decision is hard to say. It's sad that I had to abandon that other idea due to time concerns, but oh well, we all make sacrifices. As for the inspiration behind Lifeline itself, it is massively based on both Danganronpa and Squid Game. I mean, if you can't tell that Monocoin's supposed to be like Monokuma in personality, I don't know what to tell you. Numerous other cartoon and anime series were also referenced, such as Your Turn to Die with Gin's Cap, My Hero Academia with Pop-Up Ball, and Ben 10 with the watch designs. All on behalf of Calculovo, by the way, none of the other contestants. But there is a much larger purpose behind the creation of Lifeline, and by extension, Last Lifeline. Before anyone gets angry with me for saying this, please note that I am not afraid to bring up this subject regardless of how controversial it is. Lifeline is a political statement, a very strongly anti-capitalist political statement. I guess this is what happens when Calculovo lives in a relatively poor area in Brazil and is transgender with pretty religiously conservative parents. But the existence of the Line as a corporation in this universe, run by sadistic psychopaths with an entertainment complex, is a criticism of capitalism as a whole. You could even go ask Calculovo that, she can back it up. And to be clear, I resonate with a lot of these ideas as well. If I didn't, I wouldn't have even thought of the possibility of a show like this. Myself and Calculovo are probably some of the most political individuals in the OSC, so yeah, beware. So yeah, that's the inspiration behind Last Lifeline, and hopefully you guys will be able to witness the first episode within 2024 for lucky. Unfortunately, that's not very likely though, so yeah, I guess you can just keep waiting until it comes out, I guess. Alright, Rowan Nick asks, what is your professional opinion on oysters? I have never tried oysters before, so I honestly cannot say. Zach asks, what do you consider to be your biggest achievement? As of recording this, I was going to say that it would have been the Last Lifeline intro, since for a while, it was by far my most viewed video on this channel. At least until I ended up making a video about Firepound and later Light Rush. Also, I feel the need to make some updates to the intro as of now, because of numerous style style changes the show has received since then, so yeah. However, having become an animator for Clash to be Champion is a pretty decently sized feat in itself as well, so I don't know. Look, if I'm somehow able to release episode 1A of Last Lifeline within 2024, that would be an absolute miracle and would definitely take the cake for my biggest achievement right now. But let's be real, that would be brutal to try and reach right now. I won't force myself to do it if it's unhealthy, but it would be cool. Well, this next one isn't really a question, but Milky Cup says, I have no clue what to ask, but good job on 200. Thanks, Milky. I know you've been by my side for quite a while now, and honestly, it still feels kind of surreal how slowly my channel was gaining subscribers for the first year of its existence. A year ago, I only had 15 subscribers, and the channel was created back in 2022. At the start of 2024, I had about 40 or so, and now I have, holy shit, 6 times that. It's still a small number compared to the quote-unquote big dogs of the OSC, but I will continue to climb that ladder and gain more experience along the way. Now, I'm curious as to how much my channel could spike in subscriber count again once episode 1A of Last Lifeline releases. Okay, another question from Taya Stars. How long have you been in the OSC for? I said this before, but I'll reiterate. When it comes to actively being in the OSC, I have been here for about 3 years and 9 months now, with this phase of OSC interest having started back in January of 2021. I first watched BFDI back in 2016, but I was too young to actively get involved in anything back then. Okay, here's another question from Error Random Act. Do you plan on making non-OSC content in the future? Actually, I have made non-OSC content before. OSC content is still my main gig as of right now, but that's not to say I haven't ever broken my own mold and released a few videos that have very little to do with the OSC on this channel. For example, earlier this year, I posted a couple of videos relating to the Roblox game Flood Escape 2. Last year, I posted a bunch of videos related more to Roblox than to the OSC. Hell, the day right after I released the Last Lifeline intro, I released a video relating to one of my scrapped Roblox projects, which somehow managed to be my second most viewed video for a while despite not getting the same viewership spikes as the LL intro or any of my recent animations that got popular. Hell, the entirety of my old channel was non-OSC content, but I stopped using it because I felt like I'd gained subscribers in an unfair manner. I wasn't sub-botting, but most of my subscribers ended up being children, for God's sakes. And because of it, I felt uncomfortable posting anything there anymore. As for the future, however, it is definitely possible that I make more non-OSC content. Of what exactly, I don't have a personal consensus on, but I have a feeling that I will inevitably do it. Whether or not those videos would exactly do well on this channel is another question, however. Okay, here's another question from Koteka. Who would you choose as a roommate in Hotel OJ? God. Episode 17 really traumatized me, man. The answer to this question should have been in a similar boat to the other question Koteka had asked me, but it really isn't. It really isn't, because everyone is dead. Nobody is real! Why would choosing a roommate in Hotel OJ matter? No matter who I pick, they're destined to be terminated by the hands of Me Phone X, or deleted when Me was unplugged. Destined to become the victim of some horrific mass murder spree spearheaded by Steve Cobbs just to give back a Me Phone 4 after all these years. Such an emotionless monster he is, for God's sakes. But I assume we should pretend this never would have happened in the context of this question. That Hotel OJ would stay standing and that Steve Cobbs would not commit an inanimate genocide on the population of the hotel. My answer would probably be fan, honestly. Considering this is not the same as genuinely bringing someone into the real world, I would feel slightly more relieved knowing that in this reverse scenario, I could still be friends with anyone there. But me and Fan are both tech nerds, and I feel like because of it, it'd be something we could get along over during periods of relative relaxation. Also because being roommates with Paintbrush or Lightbulb would make the whole Lightbrush dynamic kind of awkward. And before you ask, no, I don't ship FanTube. So yeah, I do not want to go on any more spiels over the episode, so hopefully that's the last question relating to inanimate insanity. Okay, here's an interesting one. A Honey Jar asks, what are your thoughts on Alaska? This feels like kind of a weird question to ask, honestly. I've never even been to Alaska, so I'm not sure what the motive behind asking me this question was. Actually, I do know the motive behind this question, so stay tuned. Alaska, the land of the North Star. I think that's a nickname that locals give it, but I can't say for sure. Now, I honestly do not have any motive to travel to Alaska, at least in the near future. It's safe to say I'm not much of a wilderness person, and as far as I'm concerned, wilderness tourism is the most prevalent kind of tourism in Alaska. And Honestly, why not? It's a place of towering mountain ranges, consistently snowy weather, the northern lights, or the aurora borealis if you want to get technical, and even the occasional grizzly bear. If I ended up visiting Alaska against my will for some reason, it's not to say that I would hate being there, but it definitely would not be my top 10 favorite travel experiences. So yeah. Alright, next question. Huh? You seriously want me to bring that up? This is not what I bargained for, but whatever, I guess. Okay, so you see, this question in particular was asked by a honey jar. This was the only question he asked me, but if you know him, you know he does not care about the mountains, the snow, the aurora borealis, or any of the local wildlife. You see, Honey Jar's biggest audience is on DeviantArt, and he's pretty infamous for posting lots of quicksand. We are friends, so I did bring up this Q&A to him, but unsurprisingly, he prioritized anything that would get me to talk about this topic. Please do not ask why I agreed to this. So yeah, let's talk about the Alaskan beaches. No, I am not interested in the Alaskan beaches. I know you're obsessed over them because they're tidal flats and quicksand's your entire gig, but it is not mine. I am not wasting that amount of money no matter how much sandy I lose. This place would get boring after just 5 minutes. Once again, I would not go there unless it was against my will. But of course, you'd probably end up booking a flight to Toronto and kidnapping me for saying that. Okay, this editing feels way too much like I'm trying to cancel this guy. I'm not. Like I said, we are friends, and I mostly talk about this nonsense with him because it's basically non-existent in the OSC. Quicksand is a pretty good dramatic element that, if I recall correctly, only ever got used like once or twice by non-controversial figures in the object show community. Okay, if I ever end up talking about this again, that's my reason. Please do not equate me to Queen Quicks or anyone like that. You hear me, Calculovo? You hear me, Dreamerlin? You guys are probably laughing as you watch me talk about this shit right now. Alright, enough of that. Let's get out of here. Jesus. Another question from Forward Adventurer. How far would you say you've come since Lifeline was first conceptualized? Especially since I'm pretty sure it's been years and you've come quite far. Little cat face. Oh, thanks, Seven. I'd definitely say I've come far when it comes to learning how to manage and produce all of the resources relating to an object show in a relatively efficient manner. My time management still sucks considering it took me a month to finish this Q&A, but I'm still on the road of improvement just like everyone else. But when it comes to Last Lifeline, I feel like I've spent a long time trying to figure out how I wanted to go through with the show. The pilot episode was rewritten, split in half, shortened because I still couldn't escape my overambition. Parts of it were rewritten again, you get the point. And originally the show was going to use character rigs, but then it was going to be more traditionally animated, and then recently I decided to return to rigs after having improved on how to make them unique. It's taken me a while to solidify how I wanted things to be done, but I think it's safe to say that we're hopefully solid with these matters now, and so we can properly focus on trying to speed up production. Making an object show is a learning experience. Should I one day make a video outlining some guidelines for those who want to make a show of their own? Leave your opinion in the comments below. Dreamer Lynn asks, would you say you've improved it in your art over the last 3 years? Look, it's Dreamer Lynn. Yeah, definitely. If I haven't improved in my art from when I was still doing everything in Flip-a-Clip, at that point I should have just recognized that this isn't for me. But hey, I'm still here because I have improved in my art. Hell, if I'm still animating in the year 2026, I'll probably look at my 2024 content then, in the same way I view my 2022 content now. It's insane how you can just keep getting better at something you devote enough time to. Blossom's Paradise asks, what's your favorite band, or if not, favorite song? I am going to translate the favorite band question into favorite musician because I don't really listen to bands. Back when Az asked me about my biggest inspirations, I mentioned a lot of composers from like the Flood Escape 2 genre of music composition, but none of them are actually my true favorite musician as a whole. But my favorite musician is not my biggest inspiration for music making for reasons you'll see in a second. His name is Camellia, or Kamatech in some cases, and he composes mostly rhythm game style music. Ever since around 2021 or so, he has stood as one of my all-time favorite composers. So many of his songs are insanely intense, powerful, and even emotional in some cases. It's truly great stuff. But the reason why he's not as much of an inspiration for me is because of the type of music. When I think about composition, I mostly like to think about it in the lens of something that could actually be used in an object show, or Last Lifeline in this case. Camellia has made some songs that I feel like would be a great vibe for this type of scenario, such as Crystallized, Nacria's Snowmelt, Choir, or even For the Delta. But as for the vast majority of their music, let me ask you, would this song make any sense in an object show context? Or this song? Yeah, I didn't think so. There's definitely elements of these songs that are fantastic for building intensity in a media context, but these songs are mostly made for rhythm games. When it comes to media, the songs themselves are just far too intense. And for the record, Flame Wall is overall my personal favorite song, but I would never use it in an object show even when I gave no shits about copyright. So yeah. Another question from Rowan. What's your top object shows? What is the video you're most proud of? And Anime Insanity Season 2 is #1. I do not care how much trauma it puts me through, because it is genuinely excellent. But obviously Inanimate Insanity is not my only favorite object show. Somehow, I'd say that my second favorite object show as of writing this is Clash to be Champion. Maybe I'm biased because I animate for the show, sometimes. But somehow, it is one of the few object shows that I've been able to watch the whole way through without thinking of it as a chore, which is something that I cannot say for many shows, although I'm not the biggest fan of how character development is handled in the show. My other favorite that I'll mention here is a show that has been in purgatory for the past year because of a drama regarding its creator, and its animated inanimate battle. Even though it suffers from unnecessarily large cast syndrome, there were a lot of characters that I genuinely really liked, such as Album, Bone, Domino, Fireball, and probably a bunch of others I can't remember off the top of my head. I would have loved to see how the show could have progressed if the whole Groink drama never inflated to the amount that it did. And I will say this, the Groink drama was taken way too far. I know what originally started this, but you cannot convince me otherwise. As for the video I'm most proud of, I said this before and I'll say it again, it's the Last Lifeline intro. Even though it's a little outdated right now, but it's receiving updates soon, hopefully. And finally, Moo Maximus asks, who's your top 3 favorite contestants to write for in Last Lifeline? Oh fun, I get to talk about my biases. I will mention that there's a bunch of contestants that I imagine would be very fun to write down the road, but spoiler alert, I'll only be talking about how fun I think it was to write them in episode 1. And yes, I can think of 3 contestants that I really liked writing in the pilot episode. The first of these 3 is QnA. Is he stupid? Yes. But he's also extremely silly, and I tend to just outright adore silly characters, I'm not gonna lie. Lightbulb, no, not that one. That one could have been in this position as well, but the pilot episode will have slightly different character dynamics due to a change in setting. Lightbulb, I imagine, would be more fun once we're actually off the ship. But for QnA, it doesn't matter where you put him. He'll still be an adventure-loving optimist. He's a breath of fresh air. Second, there's Time Gear. No, I am not saying this just because Time Gear's creator asked me this question. But maybe I am at least slightly biased by saying this because Time Gear was one of the most memorable characters in the original camp. Regardless, I've just loved writing him because he's an anxiety-riddled mess who stockpiles interesting items on him. Only one of them has been used in what was written thus far, but the anxiety factor combined with his heroic attitude has made him a pretty fun one to write so far. And lastly, the winner. Wait, all these people start with T. Anyways, they're an absolute egotist. And spoiler alert, I just tend to have fun taking a character so narcissistic and squashing them like the bug they are. No, I will not elaborate. But aside from that, the dynamic that overconfident idiots like the winner have is absolutely priceless. Go on, put a strong smile on even in the bleakest of situations. Alright, that's all of the questions answered. Thank you to everyone who asked me a question for this Q&A. And once again, thanks for 200, even though it took me a really long time to make this. I'll see you later.